is Darren Deese. I am with Eventology Fundraising. I am a benefit auctioneer. It's kind of crazy, but I definitely miss the live events and all that, but we're going to get back to those soon, but we can make just as much money on virtual events and hosting these events, and we're going to walk you through that today. I'm joined today with my co-author, Michelle Gilmore. She's my co-author for Eventology, the science behind nonprofit fundraising. Michelle.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Happy Friday. And we're so happy that you joined us today. We are going to be talking about something that's near and dear to all of our hearts. And I am a professional fundraiser. I am the Senior Development Director for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And as Darren mentioned, I'm also co-author of Eventology, the science behind nonprofit fundraising, which our book launched last June. It's almost been a year, Darren. Can you believe that?
That is
crazy.
Nuts.
I know, and so much has changed us in that year, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But anyway, welcome, and we're looking forward to it. Darren, tell us what the big hot topic of our Eventology Roundtable discussion is today.
Who remembers years ago, show me the money? That's right, show me the money. Jerry Maguire said it so well. And that's what we're going to help you do today. We're going to talk about a few of the things that in virtual events and in events in general, show you the money, where it comes from, and how to plan.
Absolutely. So logistically, let's talk about a couple of things, a little housekeeping. There's a chat box at the bottom of your screen, and feel free as you're going through our presentation to add questions in the chat. We'll do a Q&A towards the second half of our presentation today. It's just Darren and I, but we're really excited to have you.
Monica too.
And Monica. Right, and yes, our colleague Monica is with us too. And so when we are through the first part of our presentation, we'll invite you to jump in and ask some of your questions. And we're happy to answer as much as we can. And then, you know, what we've been finding on these workshops, Darren, is that a lot of people are answering each other's questions in the chat, which is awesome, you know, because later there's a whole dialogue that's a lot of fun to share, and we'll do that. In fact, speaking of sharing, if you make sure to join, if you haven't yet, our Facebook group, it's Eventology Fundraising. Join the conversation, or continue the conversation.
Yeah, continue the conversation.
And I'll put the link in the chat to join too.
That makes it easy. Links are easy, even though we had links to join our Zoom meeting and we missed that. But hey, things happen.
That's right. All right.
So let's jump right in. What do you think, Michelle?
Absolutely. Let's go.
All right, so we're going to start off with really big is the question we get, and I'm on several Facebook pages. Michelle and I talk daily, sometimes multiple times a day, and we work with clients on a regular basis. And the biggest goal that comes out with the virtual meetings is, how do we set a financial goal? You've got to go to your board. You got to give them a goal, like, here's what we're going to do. So we're going to talk about setting your financial goals and then working on your budgets. Michelle, you want to kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So the question in in our email that we sent out specifically reads this: how do I set a financial goal, and can I raise as much money as my in-person event? I think that's the key question people are wondering, really, because for those of us who've been doing fundraisers and in-person events for years, and sometimes for 32 years, you know, these galas have lives of their own, right? And there's 5Ks, 10Ks, golf tournaments. So we're really perplexed, and we want to make sure that we know if we can raise as much money or even more in some cases, hopefully, as our in-person events. So where do we start with that? I would say that as I'm looking at some virtual events that I'm trying to plan, I'm definitely surveying what's going on in the community around me. I'm checking other people's virtual events out, right? I've been kind of nerded out, Darren, on virtual events.
Well, and not only you're nerded out, but you're also planning your own huge event in October, which is going virtual. So you're speaking just like most of the people on our call. You're the development director in the chair, in the seat, making the decisions, working with a huge national chain above you. You know, so you've got their guidelines to work, but you've got your own board, your own directors, and more importantly, you have your own committee. And you know, they're kind of not watching as much of the virtual events as you're watching. Because I think you and I have a little bit of a difference. You know, do they make more money or less money? And we'll get into that as well. But you're in the driver's seat because you're actually doing this, and you have the same questions most everybody on our call has about how to set the budget, right?
I would say so, but I'm really appreciative of your perspective, because you've been in the trenches and you've been doing virtual events with a lot of different organizations, and you have the proof in the pudding, right? So for instance, when I'm creating my goal, my financial goal, I want to be conservative and I want to be realistic because I'm afraid of not hitting my numbers because it's all about the money. It's all about the money. And I want to make sure that I'm able to continue my mission for my organization, right? And so what I would say is that if I was banking on making $300,000 for a live event, what my nature would say is that I would cut that in half and I would try to hit a goal of $150,000 net with a virtual event. So pick that apart a little, Darren.
Well, I mean, if you're, I always, on the other side of it, you know, you had a $300,000 financial goal and you've cut that to 150. When you had your $300,000 budget, what was your budget to, or your $300,000 goal? What was your budget to spend?
It's about $80,000.
And are you cutting that totally? You're going to cut that in half too. So you're only going to spend 40, right?
That's the goal. I mean, that would be the idea. That would, you know, I don't know for sure because there are some things I don't know what the costs are, right? So even though I don't have the big cost of the hotel ballroom or the venue for my 10K run, I don't have to pay the physical, you know, security company, the AV company, whatever it might be. Those things are going to come off my budget, but now I'm also going to be adding a new component that I don't know exactly how much that costs, right? So
I think that's the biggest question we get is from clients I'm working with and clients Michelle and I are talking to about working with going forward. They're scared to death. They don't know what to expect on setting their budgets. And Michelle, I know one of your biggest expenses because it's one of the nicer hotels down in San Diego you use. Your AV budget. That's probably one of your largest budget items outside of food.
Exactly. If you're in the development world at all of your planning events, you feel my pain every year when we're setting that PSAV budget. I'm telling you, it's always just like a thorn in my side, you know? Yeah. And so I'm happy not to have that component.
No. You still have it. You still have it in the virtual event. I'm here to tell you, I'm sorry. I'm not bringing a lot of good news. Your AV budget, you will still have it, and it could quite possibly still be the largest expense you have in doing a virtual event could be your AV budget. Right. Does it have to be? Absolutely not. Right. It really depends, I think, how big your team is. I'm working right now. We started last week and we don't end until June 3rd with a client that we're working on. Their AV budget is zero outside of a few elements where it's audio, video, and we're doing a lot of pre-recorded pieces. But everything we're doing for their event is online. It's on Zoom. We did a virtual event. We did a kickoff party. We're going to do a wrap-up party, a huge Facebook campaign with a zero AV budget. And we'll probably raise over $250,000 by the time we get to June 3rd. We're at $208,000 as of today, I think.
Well, everyone listening right now is like, okay, well, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? How'd you do it?
They have a huge team.
Yeah.
And I say they have a huge team because a lot of the questions we get is, because we have a much smaller client that's got a goal of raising about $80,000. And we're going to do that in about 5 or 6 weeks, but they're a team of 2. They're an army of 2 that want to do everything. So if you've joined us on our behind the scenes, we did behind the scenes, I think 2 weeks ago. If you haven't watched it, it's on YouTube. You can find it on Eventology Fundraising YouTube, or you can find it in that Continue the Conversation Facebook page behind the scenes. But when you see that and you see all the studio, like the studio I've got set up behind me. Okay, so to be real, this is just an image. I am not sitting in a gorgeous studio. This is a virtual image. In reality, we get to do that. But when we are in studio, there's a whole team that handles the uploads, your broadcasting. They bring all the camera equipment, they bring the lights, the sound. That's when you can spend your money. But our larger client that we're doing, we said we're trying to get to the $250,000. Everything we did was on Zoom, but we had about 15 people online with us when we did that. One person, we had 4 people managing the chat bar. We had one person that just managed all the download videos, and we practiced for 3 days. 3 days in advance. We practice every day doing the transitions and all the different broadcasts. So there's a lot of work that goes into it, but zero budget, which I know is a big win for some of you who don't have the budget. But if there's only 2 or 3 of you, you probably want to get a studio or get involved and understand the technology.
Yeah, the technology piece sounds like it's going, the event production and the technology piece could be the bigger piece of the expenses, right?
Correct.
What about for when I'm setting the budget? The other thing is for an overarching goal, do you have any experience so far, Darren, in talking to clients about how this year's numbers compared to last year's? So like my thinking is if I'm doing a 50% cut from my goal and my 50% from my expenses, you know, then fingers crossed that works out. But is that a formula that's based on anything, or is this just conservative thinking because I want to blow it out of the park? Because that's what we do, you know?
Yeah. Well, the unfortunate part is we can't go back and look at history for the last 6 months or a year because we've only been doing this for about a month and a half, 2 months.
Yeah.
In the channels that I follow, my fellow auctioneers, fundraising auctioneers kind of across the United States, I'd say a majority of the people, the majority of the events that are being successful have actually raised their ticket price. Right now, because I mean, in the last month and a half, it's strictly been virtual events because there's been no conversation about the hybrid event, which is kind of the new buzzword now, because that's what we may be able to do in September, right? Yeah, going into September. And it really depends on your state, but I've got clients that are kind of practicing that hybrid event. And with that, we're raising the ticket price, and we have to raise the ticket price because we're lowering the number of attendees that may be able to show up. So we may be able to do an event for 50 or 75 people in studio, and then we broadcast that live to everybody who can't attend and sell ticket price to both of those. So we're actually raising more money, higher ticket prices, and the biggest thing I think we're going to come up to in our conversation is sponsorships.
Yes, exactly. So, all right, I think that really actually hits on a couple points that were up. And I want to be very specific as we're going through these questions, because I want people to feel like they're leaving with an answer kind of for each one. You know, when there's so many educational workshops out here, and there's so much conversation on Facebook. And Darren, you and I know because we're part of a lot of the chats, you know, through my CFRE stuff, I'm seeing so many questions about virtual events, and it's kind of getting tiring, like hearing, yeah, you can do them, and sure, and kind of getting pointed to a certain direction, which I think is valuable, but also, you know, we all at the end of the day want answers so that we can move forward and start planning, because we're fundraisers and we want to start planning these, you know what, events. So on that note, when you just brought something up that's important, and I want to get to it, and it's sponsorship. But before we do that, when we talk about how do I budget, I did a little research on this in the last few days in preparation for today. And I was looking for, you know, I even threw in Google, good old Google, you know, virtual event budget, and to see if there's like templates available. And there's a few things kind of brewing out there. What I realized when I opened those templates is that we are staying true to an event. The event budget looks just like the event budget for our live events. It really does. I mean, sure, the venue piece, that's a line item that we scratch off. But that reminds me of what Michael said last week. You remember when we were talking about that?
Yes, yeah, we actually had, if you joined us on our phone call last week when we were talking about the audio video piece, we had Michael on the phone call, and he kind of reached out to everybody and said, you got this. You are event planners. This is no different. There are different elements of it, but the only benefit out of this, you don't have to worry about what color your tablecloths are. But other than that, all the pieces still matter. You have an event, you've invited people, you've got your tickets, you've got your sponsors, you've got your audio video budget, you've got your potential, you've got your auctioneer, your MC, and we can dive into a little bit about that later. Yeah, and you may have your food. Several events, you know, we're sending food, we're sending wine, and we can talk about that if you've got questions on that as well. So there are some pieces there, and then your rest of your event, you're telling a story. You may or may not have the online auction. You may or may not have the live auction. You can, but you're definitely going to have your story. And with your story is going to come your appeal and your ask. And when you talk about the appeal and the ask and all those pieces of the event, this is the same template, like Michelle was saying, that you had for your event last year. Yep. Pull that same thing out. Don't panic. It's just like that. Just a few things you get to scratch off.
It's so true. It's so true. And you know what? I would even say that it's even better because some of those bigger expenses are off, you know, so you can take time and invest a little bit more in social media advertising, for instance. because another thing that I was thinking about, and Darren, you and I talk about this a lot, is that with this current time when we are in front of a screen right now is a good example, and when you're trying to invite a community that you've had at a live event for the last 10 years to your event to a screen, you have to get to them somehow. You have to get to them where they are. And so how is the big question that we've been hearing, how are we getting our attendees, our donors, our sponsors to watch our program and feel the ping in their heart that they want to give, and then push the button to do so? And so be thinking about that when you're creating your budget. Also, you need to maybe spend some time with, spend some money on either a part-time staff person or a marketing company that does social media, specializes in Facebook, because that is a really good source of traffic for your event, especially with a little bit of older generations like us who are donors and a little older than us. They are on Facebook, and or you might have to create an email campaign that is very engaging, and it's very, has a drip method and has a very targeted audience. So those are two things that you might invest now a little more than if you were having an in-person event. Does that make sense?
It does, Michelle. And I want to point out something you said, because you talked about that social media piece and how important that is. Every event we've done, it is all about the social media. So what Michelle said is potentially invest and hire somebody. There are a lot of third-party firms that you can get. Don't go with your, I don't say don't go. Be cautious, going with a volunteer that says, oh, I got this. I have all kinds of time on my hand. I'll figure it out. They are well-intentioned and they're great. But if you find someone who is a professional and you can pay them to do it, your return will be so much greater. Hire the professionals to help you. It'll be a little spend. Remember, you just saved $45 for every piece of rubber chicken you're not having to buy. Spend a little bit of that. Spend $3 or $5 of that money for every attendance. Put that in your marketing budget to get the word out so people know.
Absolutely.
You want to give your board members scripts and get them to send it out. I follow a lot of events, and I have a lot of friends that are board members from multiple organizations. And I've had 3 of those events do virtual events in the last month and a half. And very few board members ever sent me an email, and I'm on their database. I'm in their list. Did they ever send, hey, we're doing this event? I heard about it, but I never heard it from them. Yeah. Huge missed opportunity. If they didn't just exclude me, they're not putting it on Facebook. They're not putting it out there. You really want someone to help you with that. And there's a huge opportunity to do it. Invest in that piece.
So before we go to the next question, I have a poll for everyone. So I'm going to launch this poll, and it's about your budget. And the question is, hopefully you can see it, it just popped up.
Ooh, good question.
What is the event budget for your last in-person event? So if for those of you who host events, go ahead and chime in and let us know what your budget was for the last in-person event you had. And there's a reason why we want to bring this up, because we want to make sure that we're speaking to where you are, in terms of budgetary.
Michelle, real quick, as they're doing that, Sue Beckett. Hey, Sue, how are you? Thanks for joining us. Sue. Sue, you were in the hot seat with us last week. Thank you. Thanks for that. But her question is there a percentage of the budget recommended to the amount of the goal? From a well-seasoned professional development director, Michelle, you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the question. That's the question of the day. But you know what? I would say that where I would have a tolerance of 25% of expenses to the goal in past, in terms of the ratio, I'm looking more at a 35% to 40% this year, and giving myself a little bit of a breathing room. Because since some of the expenses are known, but the outcome is not as well known, and when I'm creating the budget, as I mentioned before, I want to be a little bit more conservative on my bottom line for the net and keep my fingers crossed. But also the expenses are the expenses. So I would say if you're looking at a service ratio between 25 and 35%, you're probably on target. So let's go ahead and share the results of the poll. And thank you for that question, Sue. It is, here we go. So we have, most of you are in that big bucket range, that $50,000 to $150,000 budget for your event. That's your working budget. Some of you are in that 25 to 50, 10 to 25, and 5 to 10. So you're used to having some money to spend on your events. And now we get to kind of choose a little bit differently, but also there isn't that much difference, right, Darren? We're not creating it from scratch. It's not like we have to just make up a brand new formula and a whole list of new expenses. We're just shifting some things.
Yeah, it's definitely a shift. I think the piece that may play with the budget, and again, this is new because we're going into a big shift. But when we start looking at the hybrid events, which are going to be September, October, November, coming into our fall and winter season event,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to have the venue, we're going to have the seats, we're going to have the meals, and on top of that, we're going to have to stream events. So potentially that piece could go up. But when that piece goes up, there's so much more opportunity to reach people that have never donated before. Really depends on what your nonprofit and who it is, but I guarantee everybody on this phone call, everybody on this Zoom meeting, you have constituents and donors that were huge fans that may have moved out of town. They still probably love what you do, but they just can't show up at your event. Now they can. Here's an opportunity. And when you start to, do your timelines and do your budgets and kind of, work through all the individual pieces of your event. Remember, we're going to plan 2 events. We're going to have the live person event, but then we also have to still engage in those people that we're going to broadcast to, and what's that going to look like.
Right. I think it's really key that you bring that up. And I heard you say it before too. That hybrid that's what's coming. This virtual event thing is not going away. It's definitely not. It's just going to morph into a half live audience, and then some people that will be able to join virtually. And I'm loving this pivot. I actually love it because exactly what you're saying.
So Michelle, you say pivot. I want to take you back. Let's go back to our very first conversation that we did on Eventology fundraising. No, it wasn't even that. It was before we started Eventology fundraising. I think if we go back to January or February, you and I were at an AFP meeting doing a presentation.
Yep.
And it was like the 2020, a brand new thing. Remind me what you said there.
Yeah.
And if you don't remember, I'll tell you what you said.
So yeah, we were so excited to be in the 20s, and we were doing the presentation at AFP, and I said, you know what? This is a great opportunity to be bold and try new things. And we're in a brand new era. We're in this great new era. Let's go back to the roaring 20s, and the prohibition and the times of just throwing yourself into whatever it might be. And here we are. Wow, did we not know that this was coming?
Yeah, but you said be bold and get out and do things, and that really doesn't change. Here is your chance. If you've been caught up in that mix, we've always done it this way. If any of you have read our book, we start out with that little thing. I'm sorry, our board will never approve that. There's no way. We've always done it this way. Here is the perfect time to get the board to change. Exactly. And it's not your fault. And it's really not, it just happened. We have to change.
We can use this time as our excuse. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So our next question on our list is, what can we do to attract sponsors without live event perks? Okay, so we're talking about sponsorship for a virtual event. I'll let you start with this, and then I'll chime in.
Working with a client just last week. Our event's coming up in September, and it was all in person. They were all excited about it, and they're like, all right, we have to switch. And they're making the switch. They're a healthcare professional, and even in September, if they could do a live event, because they're healthcare professionals, they do not want to be the leading person that comes out of the gate and say, let's have all these people in a room. So we're going totally virtual. We're not even going to do a hybrid. We are going to go 100% virtual. And their panic was their sponsorships. We did something a little bit different when it came to sponsorships. I encouraged the entire team to get together. They called the finance department. The finance department for this organization actually printed a list of every vendor that they write checks to.
I love that.
We had a management meeting. This is all upper management. This wasn't necessarily the committee for the fundraising gala. It was a management company for this team. We all sat down in a room last week. One, it was cool because I was with people, and that was so much fun. There's about 10 people.
Apart with masks, right?
Yeah, we had masks on. I'm going to say that just because it sounds good. Yeah. We did have donuts, so you figure it out. But we sat down and we went through this whole list of vendors and all the upper management people. Yeah, I know Jennifer at that company. I'll call them. We went through all of these people, and they were relying on, we went to a whole different type of level for sponsorship to every vendor that they have, that they write checks to, right, and who had those relationships and that they were going to reach out and ask. So we got all these upper management people in this organization to make that call and call those vendor partners. And Michelle and I know from working with another client down in San Diego last year, when you bring in that whole vendor piece and give them more opportunity to get involved, it's a huge win. And online, remember, most events, and we've talked about this before, I don't want to repeat myself because we're running out of time, but most live events go from 6 o'clock to 9:30 or 10. The first 2 hours we're just being social. Now we're in the room. And when we get in the room, you see the screens, you see the banners. We say thanks to our donors, thanks to our sponsors. We flash their name up on the screen. In a virtual event, we've got the entire time to put logos up in the corners and shout out to our sponsors. Yep. On top of that, every time somebody replays it, every time somebody posts, they put it on Facebook, it's on Twitter, it's on YouTube. You can actually do more, offer more benefits to your sponsors with a virtual event than you can with your in-person event. It's a huge opportunity. Raise your sponsorship price. Why? Because you can. And remember, you're making money. Raise your ticket price. We already talked about that. That's my opinion anyway. All these things can go up because the people that are following you most of them already love you and they're following you for a reason. Yeah. The question I get, Michelle, we talked about this before, is we're doing a virtual event. All right, we should go from our ticket price from $100 to $50 or $250 to $100. Don't raise your ticket price. Yeah, I don't agree with you. Okay, that's okay. You're a development director. I'm a finance. I don't necessarily agree with you because you know, there's something different when you're offering a $250 ticket and they go to an experience at a hotel and they get valet service and the things that go along with that. And that being said, I still believe you can keep your ticket price the same or maybe drop it down a little bit and then send something really special to them. So I really like the idea when you had people coming to a virtual, sign up to be on a virtual event, and they received a Harry and David care package and a bottle of wine and glasses, you know, and that's also a great opportunity to give sponsors some love, because the glasses could have branding on them. They could have a logo. You could send, if it's a chef event, you could send like an apron that has a sponsor logo on that. So be creative about your sponsorship. And I love Darren's idea. And I'm going to be a little bit more specific because he's saying vendors, which means something different to everybody. But if you're a nonprofit and you're writing checks to a storage company, a banker, storage unit, a banker, a landlord, exactly, an office supply company, everybody you write insurance. You're asking the people that pay you, that you're paying money to, you ask them for support. It is amazing. It absolutely is amazing. Also, be sensitive to what's going on right now in the world. Obviously, some of your vendors and some of your past donors and sponsors aren't going to be able to give at the level that they're used to. However, that doesn't mean you shouldn't ask them. Just ask them and say, how are you doing? How do you feel about sponsoring us this year? Because we're going to do this virtual thing. It's going to be fabulous. You can go on there and do a little shout out about your business, and it'll play during our live presentation. And so, you know, offering something to them that's unique might make them think, yeah, I am in. That would still work. Michelle, the important piece you said is ask the question. Don't assume that your biggest donor can't participate. Maybe you even know a story that would lead you to believe that. Yeah. Let them make the choice. Don't make it for them. At least give them that. You don't have to just come right out and ask them for money. Land the plane a little softly, but go in and have the conversation. Don't be afraid to ask and let them say, yeah, this really isn't a great time, but we're going to be super excited to support you next year. Great. Well, you've been such a huge guest over the years. Could you at least come to our event? Can we get you to come and, be my guest? However you decide to word that, think about it, but always ask the question. If you don't ask, you're definitely going to probably go the wrong direction. That's right. And for sponsorship, if I had $100,000 budget for my sponsorship that I was thinking I was going to bring in $100,000 from my fall event, I would count on between 50 and 75 this year, knowing that there's going to be a little bit of fallout or some people that are downgrading.
but I would hope that I'd still retain most of them, even as guests, like you're saying, Darren, and give them some unique opportunities. The next question, Darren, is, oh, go ahead. I see you.
I just wanted to jump in, and it's kind of not in our talking points, but I wanted to add it because it's kind of important when it comes to sponsorships.
Okay.
There's a few, and Michelle, I think even one of your events kind of goes down this path. There may be sponsorships from restaurants that you've received for, for multiple years. They've been there year after year after year, and right now they're struggling. So what can you do for them to really mix it up and change it and serve them? Maybe this donor has always, offered either food or gift certificates or cards. What can you do to thank them and send business their way? And if you're going to write a check for food or have food delivered to sponsors, use some of those people who have supported your event. Give back to them. Give them an opportunity to really reach out. And, they may make you a great deal just because they need a little bit of revenue, but consider working with some of those people who have donated years and years and give back to them.
For sure. I love that. Absolutely. The next question says, who can we safely ask to support us, the donors that we're asking, in the current financial climate? Which of our donors should we definitely ask?
Every one of them.
That's my answer.
I don't know if that's a trick question or not. I would not ask anybody. I think that kind of, we may have jumped the gun with some of the things we talked about in the last 5 minutes because it kind of wraps into here. When you're asking for support, it's the vendors, it's the partners. And now you've got that opportunity, what we talked about earlier, is to reach out so much further outside of your initial sphere of influence and get outside of that.
And something that reminds me of is a conversation that we had with, what's Jason's last name on LinkedIn? Our friend Jason, who has the
responsive fundraising. Yes.
So Jason said something, I think, on one of the times when we were on his podcast, and I really liked what he said, and that was that we can't decide for other people. We don't want to guess where they are. We have to let them make the decision for themselves. So just like you would ask every year for a end of year gift, or to come to the event so that people can, support your cause and get your mission pushed through, that doesn't change because of this situation. It looks a little differently, right? So we have to make sure that we're sending a hard invitation to some people who would even still come to a virtual event. We still have to use that, but not to everybody necessarily, right?
Absolutely. Yep, you're on point there.
So the next one is, we're going into the actual bits and pieces of a virtual event in terms of what we call at the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, we call them profit centers. So these are our buckets of money. What are the 4 that we can plan on in terms of revenue from our virtual events? What are they?
You asking me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You're the only one who's answering questions right now.
That's right. I'm thinking everybody's here. This would be a good question. Open it up to everybody. Yeah. So my favorite's the live auction. I love that part. That's a big win for me. The live auction. After the live auction, we have our appeal, our story, which is where I think we should spend a majority of the time, especially on the virtual side.
Also known as a paddle raise.
We've got our paddle raise, which that kind of comes into that appeal. And we may have our online auction. I say may because we had the conversation with a client yesterday. You and I had this conversation, and they were like, all right, well, we don't have our current provider doesn't have the online auction add-on with the service they're using.
Right.
And, we don't want to spend another $1,000 to get that. But, they were really torn on whether they should spend the $1,000 to get that upgrade for the online auction. We're like, how much did you make last year? We went back into our history with the items they have. This is a smaller client with a much smaller budget, but they had only raised $3,000 or $4,000 in their silent auction at any given point. So why spend $1,000 to do that silent auction when probably not the best use of return? Because the hours it takes to load all that information, Michelle, you know that better than I, because I haven't done it. I just listen to the committee members that do it and say a bunch of really bad words. There's a lot of process to upload.
True. So true.
And then I guess the fourth one is going to be tickets. Tickets and sponsors. That's another bucket. And if I missed one, I apologize.
No. I think that there's potential for a lot of different ones. There's opportunity drawing. You can still host a raffle depending on what state you're in and what those rules are. There's a fun way to do that. You know, one of the things I really liked in that conversation that we had with the gal about not having that online auction was
Right.
she did have some donations that had come in. And
Right.
so we kind of got creative when we were saying, let's use those to incentivize our teams to fundraise. And so that's the bucket that we haven't talked about, which is we're creating a peer-to-peer fundraising piece with a gala in this case. Let's just talk about the gala, a virtual gala, where you're selling tickets and also tables. And so you can have a table, create a page for them. You can have a chat just directed for them during the event, so they feel like they're in their own little private chat room. And they even can send their team page as a fundraising competition. And you can use some of those prizes that you were going to use on the silent auction as incentives for people the weeks ahead for that peer-to-peer fundraising.
So Michelle, can I ask you to dive in, leaving the client name out of it, but there's some unique opportunities with this event because it's not just one virtual event.
That's
we have
true.
How many?
There are really 5.
It's 5. So this one client was going to have one event.
Yes.
But then we want to do a golf tournament. It started with a golf tournament. We're going to do it virtually. I'm like, all right, great. Well, I think we want to do a car show. Okay. We have a lot of people that like to run. We want to do a run. We took 4, maybe 5 events, and we're doing a whole week of fundraising with one kind of live streamed gala at the event. But it comes through. We've got Monday golf tournament, virtual golf tournament on Monday with the individual teams. And Michelle, I want you to talk about the teams and kind of that crowdfunding on that. But we've got a golf tournament on Monday. We have a car show for Porsche car show on Tuesday. Yep. We have a historical truck car show on Wednesday. We have a virtual run on Thursday. And then on Friday, we're doing our gala, our event, which is really going to be a live streamed event.
That's right. It's going to be a 1-hour live stream event. And it's going to really be the celebration of the week, right? It's the actual culminating party, if you will, of what's been going on that week. Because the same people come to the golf tournament every year, right? You have it on a Monday. So let's have their day be that Monday. And they show up to the virtual, golf tournament. But what's happening is that if I'm John Smith and I bought a foursome, then now I have a page that is dedicated to me for fundraising, and I send it out to my people and say, hey, everybody, we're raising money for this organization, and I'd like you to support my fundraiser. I'm in a stiff competition with the car club and the Porsche club and these
and the virtual run, because I don't even run.
And I want to win. So help us out, And so that's going out through social media and email, and primarily just from him, right? So we're running a whole program with a media calendar. It's a digital campaign with a media calendar. And then Friday we get to celebrate who won, they get prizes. We have, a lot of fun, just kind of with the confetti. I love that virtual confetti. We got to find that. Have you seen
it? I think one of my friends did that at an event where the confetti came in.
I don't know if it's on here.
Although we did it in the studio. We did it in the studio one, and then we had to clean up.
Yeah, so the point is, I like their chances. Their budget's pretty low, but they're going to really use their resources and their communities that are already built around those events. Right. They're going to use those.
In the executive director of this particular organization, the virtual walk run was kind of her thing because she had so many friends that were outside of the state that said that they want to support. Yes. So they're sending them t-shirts, and wherever you sign up, you're getting the t-shirts. The t-shirt was covered by sponsors for the run. So we're managing 4 different things in one party, and we're going to have everybody in on that one virtual event. So our attendance from our 150, 200 people showing up at golf will hopefully be upwards of 750.
Love it.
Where that goes.
I love it. That's so great. And you're absolutely right. I keep hearing that too. My lead, who's a chair for my virtual event, for my in-person event every year, she is from out of state. And so she's thrilled because now she can invite all of her friends from college and all of her family to attend. So I totally agree with that. So there's the next question, because we're doing a good job of staying on point. I'm so proud of us. What auction items bring in the greatest ROI? What are we seeing that are hitting the mark? So this is either silent or live auction. I'm going to guess it's not a cruise.
probably not a cruise. Maybe not. Although you can get a really good deal on a cruise right now.
Yeah. So what are the silent? What are the auction items that you're seeing that are people having success, with in their
in one of our current events that we're running right now, it's a celebrity chef experience, COVID style.
Love
So
it.
we had have a celebrity chef. We had the chef kind of come on and tease it in our kickoff party, which we sold tickets to our kickoff party for $1,000, and we had 65 people show up
on Zoom. On
so
Zoom, right?
What's that?
All on
Zoom. Yeah, that was all on Zoom. And we had our celebrity chef join us that night as well. But the opportunity is you're getting a meal for 10 when we can have small groups in your house. So you're going to host you and 9 of your friends in your house, and the celebrity chef is going to call in on Zoom. So everybody will be there. He'll have the same food in front of him that he has sent to your house for 10 people. He's sending the food, the wine, everything he has, you have, and you're going to go through and you're going to cook together. You get to ask him, you know, I need to change this. I don't like this spice. I don't have that spice. You get to change all those things, and you work with him live for an hour and a half up to 2 hours. He's going to send wine. He's dining with you virtually on Zoom. A great experience to just hang out. And obviously you can have 10 people show up at your house, but you can have multiple people call into that Zoom meeting and join you. There's no limit. So this can just be a lot of fun for a big group of people. And it is a large table that year after year at this event, this table is probably outspent every table anyway. But there's other people that are just bidding them up because they can.
Yeah, I love it.
But it's a fun COVID experience. And then a smaller one, talking auction items, and I know we're out of time.
No, you're doing okay.
Mad at us because we forgot a few things already. But there is a smaller item is a personal shopper for an entire weekend. Somebody from the organization is going to go out and do your shopping for you. Whether it's food, groceries, whatever you need, they're going to go out and shop and bring things to your house. And your gift is obviously going to the charity.
Yeah.
Lot of fun things.
Yeah, and I would say too that, be creative with virtual experiences, a behind the scenes tour that people would not normally get. That's a good opportunity. There's some things that are just brand new. Like this chef event is like a perfect example of doing something creative. And guess what? Those chefs are sitting around just like we are. So you might get yeses to those questions when you might not have before, so it's kind of fun. Eileen Hayden just shared something with us on here. Eileen, do you want to unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about this event that you're sharing about on our chat? Are you there, Eileen?
Eileen's looking for that unmute button.
Yeah.
So.
Are you there? Okay, I'll read it and you can find it. Jump in here, Eileen, if you're on there. It says, we just helped the client with their live virtual auction, including 4 live items, a raffle, and fund a need. We left the silent auction open, online auction open for a few days after the event. They surpassed their goals. The raffle squares sold out during the live event, and they met their fund and need goal by the end of the event. It was great to see the thermometer rise. Give me a minute, no problem. So the thermometer, I'm glad you brought that up, and I've talked about it on every single one of these. It's like, everybody, if you're gonna have a virtual event, you have to have a thermometer. You have to share your goal, share the amount that you're trying to raise in advance. The week before, say, guys, we're raising $60,000 and we're going to be together on Friday. Start getting your donations in, and that way you can see your name. You can do a shout out. That should be scrolling next to that thermometer on the screen, because everyone wants to be part of a winning team. Everybody wants to help you win. They'll donate money that they don't have to get you to the finish line. That's what they do.
All right, Michelle, we've got a couple items left, and then we're going to try to wrap this up so we land the plane on time.
Sounds good. So the last one is, what is the best source of paddle raise, or what you call appeal, commitments, and how do we secure those gifts in advance? So I have something on this, but I want you to start because I'm curious what you have to say.
The best source of the paddle raise is obviously, my opinion, it goes back to the story. But again, you've planned this, you've done this at every event, or you should have done this at every event that you've done, is really focus on the story. The live auction items are great. They're a lot of fun. And trust me, that's my favorite part, because I get to sell them. I get to talk fast. I get to have a lot of fun with, engage people. It's a lot of fun. I can't wait to get back to that. But right now it's our story. What's a story we can share? How can we connect with everybody in a virtual format? And in September, obviously virtual and in person. That's a huge part of that advance. But just like your gala, or your event where you're doing your ask, nothing's changed. You still need to secure, and you want to secure 1 or 2 gifts, if possible, each level, and even more so in the virtual world. Because when you start out and we tell the story, whether I told the story as your fundraiser and your MC, or if you're executive director, if you couldn't talk them out of doing it and they insisted that they had to do it. Michelle, I know you've got opinions on that. I think we both do. However you choose to do that, that's your own choice, and who your spokesperson is. Yeah. But the elements of that piece is, if you can secure a gift, if you're starting at $10,000, have a $10,000 donor already. You want to have that success, and then scroll their name across the top of the screen. There's a lot of pieces of that. But what it does in a live format, even if we're on Zoom, whether we're on YouTube, Facebook Live, on Zoom, on Twitch, there's so many different opportunities. If you have those pieces lined up, you can use them to fill space. When I say fill space, when we start out and we can say, hey, Sue and Carol, thank you so much for your $10,000 gift. You know, Sue, you've been a huge fan of our organization for years. And without donors like you, oh, David, oh, look, Dave and Marcy, they just donated it $10,000. Yeah. You see it in the chat. When you can interact with somebody and make it personable. The cool part about virtual events, if you have pre-pledged gifts, you can tell a little story about that donor that maybe you might not be able to do in a live event because everything's moving so quick. We can use these spaces to fill, and they're so much more impactful, and they make people feel really good. And, you know, everyone's going to attend the event, and, you know, the goal is before they hang up, you know, how do we make them feel? That's our goal. The thermometer is great. We feel great. But, you know, if we can make them feel great for being a part, whether it's that $10,000 gift or that $100 gift, that's everything. That's our job. That's my goal as a fundraising auctioneer, to make the people we're engaging with and working with at your event feel amazing after the event, that they had a great experience, and then that they want to share it.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. And I would even go one step further and say that whoever was your $10,000 donor last year and maybe the year before, you might ask them in advance and say, hey, we're doing this for the first time. We're not exactly sure how it's all going to work, but if you would do a match for us during the appeal, and maybe at the $1,000 level, we can announce your name and we can do a challenge and say, you know, John and Joan Smith are just donating, you know, to the Boys and Girls Club or whatever it is, $10,000. So the next 10 1,000 gifts are going to be matched dollar for dollar, and you roll that out. I mean, it's I mean, just like in the live event, to be honest. But
nothing there changes at all.
The key of what you just said, which I think is so important, is spend time, get on the phones, get your board engaged in making phone calls to get as many pre-pledged donations as you can, because that will also allow your thermometer to move up visually during your live, you know, event. You want to be plugging that number in kind of as you go. So even if you have them secured before, don't start, you know, all the way almost to the top. Really let the people during that 1 hour show watch that thermometer get closer and closer and closer to the top, because I think that's going to help drive donations.
Definitely does. All right, we're getting really close to wrapping up. One thing I want to just address, because I see the question in all the Facebook groups that I'm a member of, I get the chance to see it, is you know, what's the biggest myth? What's the biggest challenge? A virtual event or a hybrid event, I promise you, it is just as much work. If you think that you're going to do a virtual event and just kind of half-ass it, I apologize for that, but don't. You can't do that. It is a lot of work. You actually have more opportunity to connect with so many more people. Do it right. Tell your story to the T. You can practice and practice and practice your story until you get it right. It can be pre-recorded. When you do a live event and the executive director gets up there and starts talking and rambling, you can't stop them. Yeah. In a virtual event, cut, take, wrap, throw that one away, delete it, and do it again. Get it right. You have their attention. Just like a virtual event is the same thing we're doing in this Zoom meeting right now. Yeah. All of you, every one of you, I mean, I see you looking at it, and you can hear us. You're not behind a table. You're not behind the loud table making noise and drinking. You can hear everything. You can see everything. Yeah. It's a perfect opportunity to connect. So please.
Speaking of that, because I'm going to have to sing your praises for a minute here. is hire professionals to help you. Don't worry about you're not going to make enough money so that you take your budget and also make it go like this, because you get what you pay for, just like in real events. You know, you have to spend money to make money. Do the same thing with your virtual events. Get an auctioneer, get a professional MC like Darren. He's available and he's very good. And he's not even paying me to say that, as a matter of fact. But the point of that is that I have been watching some of these virtual events. As I was telling you, I'm like totally nerding out on them. And the most disappointing piece I see so far is that the executive director will sit there and talk for 4 hours long in some cases, or even an hour, and they will be the host and the MC and the person who makes the ask. And remember, it's still an event where you want your guests to be entertained. You want to have a show quality that is going to be appealing, and it's going to keep people hooked in for the whole time.
Yeah, and you say the whole time, remember the virtual event, it's not over at 9:30. This is online, it's on YouTube, it's on your website. This will be viewed over and over and over again. So you have all the elements to make it a perfect marketing tool going forward. Don't make it about the event, because now you have a marketing tool to share with any donor 6 months after the event, 12 months after the event. It's yours, it's there. So yeah. Michelle, it is 12:55 already.
Perfect. I have a quick share, and then you can talk about the hot seat. So Debbie Roth said, a ring toss idea, have wine, have it set up in the office or home or staff person, and people buy a toss. The staff throws the ring and is video doing it, and send message to the raffle person with the video, and of course, how they'll pick it up. That's awesome. That's really
kind of fun. That makes me think of, like, you know, the duck races where you buy your number and the winning duck wins. Debbie, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Debbie Roth is a real good friend of ours. She's with Greater Giving. So if you've got any Greater Giving questions on that particular element, throw them in the chat bar right there, and Debbie Roth will reach out to you.
Okay, Derek, tell us about the hot seat opportunity.
The hot seat opportunity for those who have been to a few of our roundtable discussions before, we thank you for coming back. Last week we had an awesome conversation with Sue Beckett, who's on our call today. She won the opportunity to be in the hot seat, or she would not be in the hot seat, to put Michelle and I in the hot seat.
That's right.
And if you're a member of our Facebook Continue the Conversation page, you get the invitation to the hot seat. What it is you're putting Michelle and I in the hot seat. So you get 30 minutes with Michelle and I to ask any questions about fundraising.
Fundraising. Yes.
Yeah, don't get crazy. Any fundraising questions, we're going to talk with you live for a half hour. It's Facebook Live. So we're going to share it with all your friends, our friends, and for everybody else to kind of learn. You get Michelle and I in the hot seat. It's totally free. You can win it today. You've got to sign up. Michelle's going to put a link in our chat bar right there. You'll see right there on the bottom of your chat bar, that little bit.ly link. Click on that, register, and we will notify you within 1 hour of this meeting today. As soon as we close, get posted, and go eat lunch, we're going to pick a winner. Right. So join us in the hot seat. And Michelle, I think you had something to follow that up.
I do. In fact, we're going to go on Facebook Live with that hot seat next Wednesday. So we'll probably pre-record it, and then we're going to show at Facebook Live around noon on Wednesday. And if you want to watch it, make sure you join our Facebook group. I'm adding the link to the chat right now. It's a private group. And so all you have to do is ask, and we'll let you in if we like you. So that's, a lot of you are already in there. We're going to continue to provide resources as we find them. In fact, one of the things I was going to share today is an event that was very successful in Alabama. And I'm going to actually put the link to that event in our conversation right when we hang up with this call right now. So check it out. They killed it. They absolutely killed it. I love this event.
Well, I think that's it, Michelle. I think we've got 2 minutes.